Hi, welcome back to Conspiracy Cases. I'm Jeff Dixon, I'm your host, and we're looking at the conspiracy surrounding the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. In our previous episodes, we gave you some of the details surrounding the event and how King himself seemed to indicate that he knew there were forces at work against him. In the previous episode, we looked at a confusing, mounting pile of evidence that basically points away from James Earl Ray, the confessed killer who revoked that confession, and maybe, just maybe, there were more forces at work. Today, we wrap up this series, and now we add that King's own family became convinced that James Earl Ray was not MLK's assassin. In 1999, in Memphis, they won a wrongful death civil trial against Lloyd Jowers, a name we mentioned in the previous episode, and other unknown co-conspirators. The jury of 6 whites and 6 blacks found that Jowers was guilty and that government agencies were parties to the assassination. And if they didn't participate in the assassination occurred with their knowledge and implied their blessing. That was the cavalcade of allegations against government agencies that Attorney General Janet Reno felt obligated to begin a probe by the Justice Department of the United States. This concluded in the year 2000 with the following. I quote, "After original investigation and analysis of the historical record, we have concluded that neither the Jowers nor the Wilson allegations are substantial or credible. We likewise have determined that the allegations relating to Raoul's participation in the assassination, which originated with James Earl Ray, have no merit. Finally, we find that there is no reliable evidence to support the allegations presented in the King versus Jowers of a government-directed conspiracy involving the mafia or Dr. King's associates. Accordingly, no further investigation is warranted." And with that, the Justice Department of the United States of America had given the definitive word. James Earl Ray had acted alone. MLK, like JFK and RFK, was killed by a lone nut. That is the historical record. America in the 1960s, it seems, was full of lone nuts who somehow managed to pull off intricate assassinations of great men, great leaders that would shape history. Or maybe not. In 2004, Reverend Jesse Jackson, who was with King at the time of his murder, noted, "I will never believe that James Earl Ray had the motive, the money, or the mobility to have done it himself. Our government was very involved in setting the stage for, and I think, the escape route for James Earl Ray." You may or may not agree with Jesse Jackson's take, although he was there. You may or may not agree with Jesse Jackson's politics through the years. That's completely your right. But at the end of the day, we come to that moment where we have to be honest and say that in some ways, Jesse Jackson's quote voices the belief of millions. People then and people to this day wonder. The 60s were a different era. There's no doubt about it. The 60s were a different era where the business as usual that is done today in government circles is not the way that business operated in those days. But at the end of the day, no matter whether you believe it was a lone gunman or whether it was a group of co-conspirators who plotted together to eliminate the leading voice for the civil rights movement in the history of America, you can conclude this, that the assassination was evil incarnate. And it begs the question that we spiritually have to address. Why is it that when we engage in conversations or thoughts that are not mainstream or go against the flow, that the reaction of so many is so violent, so evil, and so full of hate. Because see, you don't assassinate someone unless you're driven by evil and hate. There's no other excuse for it. And so we have to understand that if we're going to take some spiritual lessons from this moment, no matter what your politics, no matter what your belief, no matter what you're thinking about the conspiracy, we as followers have to be able to engage the people, the world, the culture around us in civil conversations. We have to be able to hear things that we don't agree with. And when we hear things we don't agree with, we have to come to the conclusion that we're not always going to like what we hear. But we can determine that we won't be offended by them. Because when you know what you believe, and you're strong in what you believe, and you believe in the truth, and if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, you know the truth, then you know you can stand, and you can provide an argument, and you can provide a defense, and you can provide those things in a way that's healthy, that models the love of Christ. That is the challenge for followers in a world today that sometimes seems very anti-God, anti-Jesus. To be able to engage that culture in a way that makes Jesus appealing and, as followers, reflects him in a way that he would want to be reflected in the world, that's not always easy to do. Because we love, by nature, to shortcut things. We love to become offended. We love to fight back. We love to wipe our hands and say, well, then, you are just not fit to have a conversation with. But when things change, conversations need to happen. And it doesn't have to be violent change or violent conversations. And learning to do so and learning to reflect the love of Christ with dignity and to be able to communicate truth and to be able to hear it and talk about it and to be able to engage really are the ways that change can come about. And so, let me encourage you, don't be afraid of tough conversations. Don't be afraid of hearing things that you don't agree with. Don't be afraid of getting into the high weeds sometimes with those that maybe don't think or feel or act the way you do. And don't be afraid. Simply be faithful to do what you were created and called to do. And at the end result will be that God will use you to change the world. And so, was there a conspiracy to assassinate Martin Luther King? There are a lot of pieces of evidence that point to it not being a lone gunman. That is for you to decide. The Department of Justice has made its official declaration. You have to figure out what to do with the extra evidence that is out there surrounding it. Is it coincidence that a guy who wasn't really qualified to make a shot make a 1,000,000-to-1 shot? Did a man without the means to travel have a path and a way where he almost escaped? And were there others that just didn't like King but didn't dislike him enough to try to kill him? Because he certainly had his enemies. You can unravel that. But at the end of the day, remember, to speak the truth in love is such a vital part of our Christian faith. And doing that will make us successful followers. I look forward to joining you next time as we open another conspiracy case.